Okay, 7th grade, for today's Ed Puzzle lesson, we're coming back to Code Talkers. It's going to be a 10-ready prep lesson, but we're coming back to our novel. To refresh your memory, take the next 3 minutes to answer these two. Choose your answer, explain, and then answer this short answer question. 3 minutes on the timer, and begin. Okay, and that is time. As you looked over the best objective summary, remember with an objective summary, we're looking for no opinion and we're looking for the most important key points. As we look at answer choice A, the boarding school where Ned goes is run by, and it tells the two characters. Principal Sullivan is a white. These sort of are just like details in the answer. So I'm going to label these like SD. These are just supporting details. I wouldn't say these are main key points that we'd want to include in a summary. Ned is treated very unfairly. We need to cross that one out because that's an example of opinion. No opinion should ever be in an objective summary. So I crossed out A because it just gave details. It didn't give key points that we want to include in a summary. This included opinion, so we ruled that out. Let's look at C. Ned is sent away to a mission boarding school with many other Navajo children. I think that's important. When he arrives, he realizes that many parts of his Navajo culture are being removed by the school. And so I'm going to put check, important, check, important. While some students openly start to resist our system in school, Ned continues to study and only speaks Navajo in private. Check. I think C might be an important a possible answer choice because we only have the key points. We don't have unimportant details, and we also don't have any personal opinion. But let's look at D. Ned is sent away to a mission boarding school. The trip is very long and difficult. That sounds like opinion. He travels with his uncle through the desert. Not long enough, also. Doesn't give enough of the important details, so I'm going to cross out D. C was the best objective summary of what's happened so far in Code Talkers. What were 2 ways that the boarding school disciplined students harshly from chapters 4 and 5? You could talk about how they washed their mouths out with soap. You could talk about how they beat the students with sticks. Or you could have talked about how the principal even locked that one boy, the one who was pretty rebellious and kept speaking Navajo, down in the cellar. All of that, as long as you had complete sentences, would have been correct answers for number 2. So like I said at the beginning, today's lesson is going to feel a little bit different. I wanted to give you a little bit of a break from just the constant multiple choice and come back to Code Talkers because a lot of us have really been enjoying it so far. So let's take a look at our objective. I can analyze how the author contrasts, that means like shows differences contrast the points of view of different characters in chapter 7, that's a mistake, in chapter 7 of Code Talkers. So as we're reading through our chapter today, you need to be thinking about what is Ned's point of view, what are some of the other characters' points of view. A lot of you have been saying, Mr. Wilson, why are they forbidding them to speak Navajo when they're trying to train them to be code talkers and use their Navajo? The war has not started yet so far in the book. So Ned has not even been recruited to be a Navajo code talker. Today's chapter is the first chapter where we're going to see that the war breaks out and Ned tries to get into the military so he can become, well, he doesn't know it's going to become a code talker. He just wants to join the military. So, as we're coming over to our text, please do not forget our different annotations. As I'm looking over this, let's pretend this is a 10-ready passage. Chapter 7, if it's a chapter book, I already know this is going to be F. I'm going to label it for fiction. But there are key things we're going to be looking for. S, descriptions of the setting. You need to be looking for details about C, the characters, especially new characters that we meet. And you need to label any P, a problem. There are going to be multiple problems that Ned faces in here. This is what I'm going to be looking for, and this is the reason why I'm having you put your name on your text, because I'm looking for these annotations. Finally, you need to label any TDQ answers. So we're still doing that, but we're bringing in our genre-based thinking jobs, our GBTJ, our 10-ready annotations, setting, characters, and problem. Let's preview our questions. All right, let's look at number 1. Number 1 says, what is Ned, it's a typo, S. What does Ned say the Japanese were doing in the war against America in the first paragraph? Flip it. Ned says the Japanese were. Now I'm ready to write. I'm going to be looking for my answer as I go. Be following along. Let's see if we can find it. Over the next days, we learned more about the air raid on Hawaii. Remember when we watched that Pearl Harbor video clip when the Japanese came and bombed the Americans? That's what's just happened. We heard the names of islands thousands of miles away from here. He's talking about a possible setting, a location, where the Japanese were attacking American and Allied bases in the Pacific. Again, a setting far away from where he is. Even I, who love geography, had never heard of most of those places. I had to look hard through the maps in my geography book to locate them. Wake Island, names of the islands. Guam, Guadalcanal. By Christmas of 1941, all those places had fallen to the Empire of the Rising Sun. That's another name for Japan. So, let's come back to our TDQ, because this was paragraph number 1, so I know I need to give my answer already. So, it says, what does Ned say the Japanese were doing in the war against America in the first paragraph? Ned says the Japanese were, let's take a quick look up here. What does it say that the Japanese were doing? Well, they were doing air raids on Hawaii. They were attacking American Allied bases in the Pacific. Bingo, here's my answer. Underline it. TDQ number 1, circle it. Now let's come back up here. Ned says the Japanese were attacking the Allied, remember that's the United States, that's England, that's France. Ned says the Japanese were attacking the Allied bases in the Pacific Ocean. TDQ number 1, check, done. Let's move to number 2. Why were so many of the Navajo families still poor? Flip it. So many. This is the kind of pace you should be working at. Note, so many Navajo families were still poor because. Let's go ahead and keep reading. Again, I'm not going to be continuing to stop to sort of give you or guide you through the answers. For 2 through 7, make sure that you're looking at the questions and pausing the video if you need to, but please be following along. I'll be looking for annotations as you go. You must all sacrifice to help the war effort, our teacher said. Even though I understood what they meant, I could not help remembering that we Navajos had already sacrificed a lot. Most of our families were still poor because of the government livestock reduction of our sacred herds. Livestock are like cows. Herds are like groups of cattle or groups of animals. So he says, most of our families were still poor because of the government livestock reduction. Reduction means to like take away our sacred or important herds. I'm going to label this P because that's a problem that the Navajos are still really poor. None of our people were as wealthy as any of the Bilingas, the white people, we saw, especially those who ran the trading posts. Don't forget to be stopping for your TDQs if you need to. Poor as we were, we Navajos really did want to help. Our tribal council met at Window Rock and declared war on Germany, Japan, and Italy. I'm going to label this S for setting. It's a place on their Navajo reservation. Navajo men took their guns, packed supplies, and rode their horses in to report to the Indian agent. They did not know how far away Pearl Harbor was, but they were ready to go there and fight the enemy. However, almost all of those men were told they could not be warriors for the United States. They could not be warriors for the United States, that's a P problem, because they only spoke Navajo, or because what English they spoke was not good enough. That made them sad and ashamed. Another problem. I wanted to join up too and go fight the enemy. I could speak English well, but I was only 14. Another problem for Ned. When that attack came on Pearl Harbor. That was far too young, and I was too small to convince anyone that I was older. This war will be over, I said to my friends, before I am old enough to enlist. At first, that is what many people thought. Now that America has declared war, Mr. Straight said, shaking his bony figure at the sky, the fighting will soon be over. Everyone on the radio and in the newspapers agreed. The Axis powers, that was what they called Japan, Germany, and Italy, would quickly crumble. Sadly, we were all wrong. As the months wore on, it became clear that this war was going to be a long one. It also seemed that the U.S. Armed Forces was yet another place where Indians were not wanted. I'm going to underline that and label that P because that's a problem or a conflict in the story. Only a few Navajos had been accepted as U.S. soldiers. All of them men who had been to mission school. Remember, mission school is the school where he went before with the really harsh discipline. There seemed little interest on the part of the U.S. Armed Services in enlisting the help of those of us who had loved this country long before the ancestors of the Bilingas had came here. Then, in April of 1942, everything changed. A message from Che Dodge, circle that and label that C, that's a new character, our Navajo tribal chairman, label that C, was sent around the reservation for shortwave radio, by shortwave radio. A Marine recruiter. Marine, new character. Remember, the Marines are a certain group within the U.S. Army. A Marine recruiter was coming to Fort Defiance, S setting, looking for Indian, flip, volunteers. Not just any Indians, but Navajos. Navajos were needed for special work. The Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs had given its sanction for Navajos to join up. However, only men fluent in both English and Navajo were wanted. When I heard that announcement on the radio, I could hardly speak. Navajos, I finally managed to say to my friends. Navajos, they want Navajos. Did you hear that? I was so excited and talking so fast that they teased me. Are you sure that's what they said? Tommy Nez asked me. Way hey, Jesse Cheese said. Yeah, didn't they say that they wanted Mexicans? But that radio announcement interested those guys too. Our high school was not far from the tribal offices in Fort Defiance. The Marine recruiter was scheduled to speak the next morning, a Saturday, which meant we had no classes to attend. So the three of us went down there together, just to look at that recruiter. He had been given an office right near our Navajo tribal headquarters, and we could see that the door was open. We quietly crept up and peeked through the door. A tall, broad-shouldered white man, this is the Marine, label that character, wearing a neat, well-pressed uniform, sat at a desk. He seemed very serious. He sat with his back straight, writing something on a pad of paper. Perhaps it was the recruiting speech that he was about to give. We were perfectly quiet. I am sure he did not notice us peering in. He was impressive to see, but what was even more impressive were the things on the walls around him. Look at that, Jesse Chi whispered, pointing to his chin. We looked. There hung a beautiful sword in a silver case. Just below it was a fine rifle. To either side of the rifle and sword were posters that showed Marines standing tall in their dress uniform. One of them, in the most colorful poster of all, looked much like the recruiting sergeant himself. However, the uniform of that poster Marine was much more striking than his. That uniform, it was so beautiful to behold. Circle behold means like to see. The coat and trousers were made of cloth that was as shining and blue as the sky. The cap and gloves were white as clean snow. The leather boots were as black and polished as jet. We're going to go ahead and pause there. This is your final TDQ. I know it says exit ticket on the next page, but you could start the exit ticket reading right here as well. If you have not fully finished getting your TDQs at this time, please pause your video so that you can go through and you can finish getting these. So again, if you're not fully finished with TDQs, pause now and go ahead and get them down. Those who are ready to move on, go ahead and flip your page because we're going to go ahead and get into the 10 Ready Prep today. A couple quick things as you're getting into our practice today before I sort of release you. Take a look at number one. Number one says, how does the author contrast points of view, circle the word contrast, circle points of view, of Ned and the U.S. Armed Services? That means which one of these best shows that the author's point of view is, that Ned's point of view is different than the U.S. Armed Services. As you're reading over each of your answer choices, you need to be thinking, is there evidence in the text to support this? Yes or no. Cross out the answer choices that you know there's no evidence in the text to support. Next thing I want to point out to you. Number 2 is asking you to choose 2 pieces of evidence. So answer choice blank and blank are the best piece of evidence because they show, and then you're finding a third piece of evidence on your own that shows how Ned's point of view is different from the U.S. Armed Services. Use your sentence stem, and then finally explain. Use your sentence stem. Because we have done this and worked through this many times before, I'm going to release you to work through. At the end of the Edpuzzle lesson, I'm going to reveal the correct answers to task 1 and task 2. I need to see when I come around to check your packet that you've attempted it first on your own, or it will be a 0, it won't be credit. But I do want you to know that you are going to be checking over your answers at the end to see what your grade is. All right. So at this time, I'm going to release you to start on the independent practice. Go ahead, setting the timer now for about 10 minutes to be working through that independent practice. Task 1 and then task 2, and begin. Okay, if you have not yet moved to task 2, go ahead and flip and move to task 2. If you are done with task 2, you're moving right on through to that exit ticket. Keep it moving. Self-paced. Go. Okay, at this time, if you have not already completed task 1, go ahead and finish it now. But I'm going to go ahead and talk over task 1. So again, if you have not fully finished, pause your video now. As you were looking over, you should have looked for the answer choice that had the most amount of evidence to support it. The correct answer for number 1 was B. While Ned knows that he and the Navajos could contribute positively to the war on behalf of the Americans, the U.S. Armed Services believes the Navajos should not be able to participate. Again, we're asking how are their points of view different between Ned and the U.S. Armed Services. Now, when you came down here to your 2 pieces of evidence that best illustrate your answer number 1, you're looking for 2 pieces of evidence that show that the Navajos, Ned and the Navajos, think that they could really help out positively, and also that the U.S. Armed Services believes that the Navajos should not be able to participate. If you look at answer choice A, that connects up here and supports this part of your answer. If you look at answer choice B, this supports our answer to here. So as you were working through task 1, you should have chosen answer choice A and B are the best piece of evidence because they show, you could have said they showed and supported each group's point of view, whatever you wanted to say for our explanation. For your third piece of evidence, you should have looked back in and pulled out a piece of evidence or a sentence that showed that Ned thinks the Navajos could contribute positively, or that the U.S. Armed Services did not think that the Navajos should be able to participate. If you need a little bit more time, pause your video now. If not, you are ready to move on to task 2. Take a look at the question. It's changed a little bit. Which of the following best summarizes Ned's point of view towards the white Marine? So right now we're not contrasting. Right now we're summarizing his point of view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set 7 minutes on the timer, choose your answer, and work through. Begin. Okay, at this time, if you have not fully finished task 2, pause your video and recording. If you're ready, go ahead and flip to your exit ticket. I'm going to ask you to pause your video if you have not fully finished your exit ticket. Again, pause your video at this time if you have not fully finished your exit ticket. At this time, I'm going to reveal the answers to task 1, task 2, and the multiple choice on the exit ticket. For task 1, number 1 was B, and number 2 were A and B. For task 2, the answer was C, A and C, and for the exit ticket, the correct answer for the multiple choice was B. I need you to go back through, put check marks if you got those right, and I need you to put X's if you got them wrong. See which ones you missed. Again, take this next 5 minutes to be looking over If you need to finish up your exit ticket, do so now. If you are making sure you need to go back through your packet and finish up, do that now. 5 minutes, go. Okay, you guys have done an excellent job working through your packets. If I have not checked over it, make sure I check it so you get your grade. Make sure you've checked your answers, and then I'll tell you what to be doing next. Excellent work today, and we'll talk soon.